We continue now at the top of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 13b. On the previous summit, the Gemara offered two explanations in terms of Rav's statement. Rav said that when we're talking in the Mishnah about Tenu Mana LePloni, give a Mana to Ploni. So Rav said we're talking about a specific Mana that's Tzibornu Munachin, that's piled up in a corner. It's not just a hundred dinar in general. It's a specific 100 dinar. And so the question is, why did Rav say that it has to be a specific 100 dinar? And we had two approaches. Rav Papa said we're talking about a matnas shchiv meira in the Mishnah, and even by a matnas shchiv meira, it has to be a specific mana because we're afraid otherwise. Maybe he's talking about a mana cover. Maybe he's talking about some buried mana that we don't know about, and therefore we don't give it. That was Rav Papa's approach, and Rav Zavid's approach was we're talking about a bari, we're talking about a healthy individual in the Mishnah, and the reason why it has to be tzibor and munach, and the reason why it has to be piled up and be a specific mana is because we're talking about a kinyan called ma'imit shloshtan, and by a kinyan of ma'imit shloshtan, which does create a kinyan immediately, but it has to be a specific mana. And so the Gemara asked at the bottom of the previous summit, why is it that Rav Papa doesn't hold like Rav Zavid's approach? And the answer is, Kasavar Rav Papa holds, Ki Amar Rav, when did Rav make a statement, meaning referring to the statement about ma'imit shloshtan, lo shna b'milva, v'lo shna b'fikadon. It doesn't matter if it's a loan or if it's a deposit, it makes no difference. It doesn't have to be a specific mana, and therefore it cannot be that we're talking about ma'imit shloshtan in the Mishnah, because then it would not have to be tzibor and munach, and it wouldn't have to be a specific mana. And Rav Zavid, my time Rav Papa, Rav Zavid, why doesn't he say like Rav Papa? Meaning, why doesn't he say that we're talking about a shchiv meira, and by a shchiv meira it has to be a specific mana? Otherwise, we're concerned it might be some mana that's buried somewhere that he was referring to. And to that, the Gemara says, "Lo mesukum masnisim b'shchiv meira." Rav Zavid does not want to say that our Mishnah is talking about a shchiv meira. Mimai, why is it that we know the Mishnah is not a shchiv meira? Midakatani, because what does it say in the Mishnah? At the beginning of the Mishnah, it says, "Ha'omer tenu get zel ishti u'shtar shechor zel li'avdi v'meis." If a person says, "Give this get to my wife," or "Give this shtar shechor to my Eved," and he dies, lo yitnu la'achar misa. So again, it said that we don't give these documents after the individual has died. And so the Gemara says, "Time of the meis." The reason why we don't give it is because he died. Hamechayim nosen, but if he'd be alive, so we would give it. And time of the amar tenu, and the reason is because he said tenu. Halo amar tenu, but if he didn't say tenu, ein nosen, so then we wouldn't give it. Ushchimera, but we know by a shchimera that's not the case. By a shchimera, afagav the lo amar tenu nosen, even if he doesn't say tenu, so still we give it. Again, by shchimera, we are more lenient, so to speak, in terms of allowing the kinyanim to take effect, and therefore it cannot be that our Mishnah is talking about a shchimera. Now, how do we know by a shchimera that even if he doesn't say tenu, that it's going to be a kinyan? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Barishona, Hayu Omrim, in the beginning they used to say, Hayotse Bekoler, let's say a person's going out in chains, V'yamar, and he says, Kiz will get L'ishti, write a get for my wife, Hare Elu Yichtavu V'yitnu, so they should write the get, and they should give the get in that situation, meaning he's being taken by the government to be killed, so they would write it and give it. But Chazru Lomer, but then they retracted and they said, Afa Mefaresh V'hayotzi B'shayar, even somebody who's just going out to sea, traveling by caravan, somebody who's going far away, also with such an individual, if he says Kis will get L'ishti, they write it and they give it. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer, Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, Afa Mesukin, even somebody who's in danger. And as Rashi explains, the Mesukin that Rabbi Shimon Shazuri is referring to is a Shchimera, and so you see, according to Rabbi Shimon Shazuri, even if the individual, the Shchimera, just says Kisvu and he doesn't say Tenu, that is going to be sufficient, and therefore our Mishnah cannot be talking about a Shchimera. But the Gemara says, Maskifla Ravashi. Ravashi asks a question on this. Uman name alone, Demasisa Rabbi Shimon Shazuri. How do we know that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Shimon Shazuri? Dilma Rabbanan. Maybe our Mishnah follows the Rabbanan. And Rashi explains, again, Rav Papa holds when it comes to ma'imit shloshtan, loshna b'milva, it doesn't matter if it's a loan, it doesn't matter if it's a deposit, v'afa gav d'lo tzah nitna, even though by a loan, so that's something that the money was already spent, there's no specific money, ve'ena be'en, it's not in front of us, still the ma'imit shloshtan would work, hilkach lo be'in and tziborin, so therefore you don't need that it's piled up in a corner, even ma'imit shloshtan kamayrim masnisin, if it were true that our Mishnah is talking about ma'imit shloshtan, and so therefore it cannot be that Rav was talking about ma'imit shloshtan, and then the Gemara said, time of the mace, and our Mishnah, the whole reason why who the lo yitnu the ein get la'achar misa. The whole reason why you do not give the get is because ein get la'achar misa. It's because the individual, the husband died or the owner died. Hamechayim knows them, but if they would be alive, if the owner, if the husband would be alive, they would give it. V'lo tzarich sulim luchebe. You don't need to ask him any further. We would give it. V'tayim adamar tenu. And apparently the Mishnah is saying it's only because he said tenu. Kilomar v'hadad aikinan hamechayim knows him. Meaning when we infer from the Mishnah that if he was alive we would give the get, we would give the shtar shechor. Time adamar meikar tenu. That's only because because he used the word tenu. Keniktani tenu get liishti. Hello, Amar tenu, but if he didn't say tenu, ela kisvu, he just said kisvu. Lo havitala tana debasis and time of the lo yitnu mishamisa. Then you don't have to say the reason not to give it is because he died. The afila mechayim nami ain't nosin, because you don't even give it when he's alive in a situation where it's just kisvu, and that's not the case by a shchimera according to Rabbi Shimon Shazuri. And Rashi continues explaining the Mishnah later on, Hayotzi b'koler leharg, if someone's going out in the chains to be killed, again he's being killed by the government, v'yamar kisvu get liishti, and he says kisvu, kadesh lo tizakik liyavam, the reason why he's saying kisvu is he doesn't want that she has to do yivam, harei elu yichtavu v'yitnu, they write it and they give it, mitochshu bol al nafsha, the reason is over here, since he's very concerned about his life, lo gamar lemilsa, he didn't say everything he was supposed to say, umiyu kisvu tenu havidaita, he meant to say kisvu tenu, and hamafarish bayam, again someone goes out to sea, v'ayotzi b'shayar lemidbar, or somebody goes out in a caravan to the wilderness, and then Rabbi Shimon Shazuri said, "Afa mesukin shchivmeira." This is true even by a shchivmeira. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above. Amar Rav Huna Marav. Rav Huna says that Rav says, "Mana li biyadcha." If a person says, "You owe me a mana," teneyu lo leploni b'mayim shloshton. He says that money that you owe me, give it to so and so, and he does that b'mayim shloshton in front of 3 people. So kana, so that creates a kinyan. Amar Rava says, "Mistabra milsei derav bepikad," and it makes sense to say that what Rav said is by a deposit. Again, it's by a specific money. Aval b'milva lo, but if it's just a loan, if the person's saying you owe me a money in general, so then we would not say this kinyan of ma'imit shloshtan. But the Gemara says, "V'alokim amarav," but by God, isn't it true that Rav said, "Afilu b'milva"? Rav made this statement even by a loan. The kinyan of ma'imit shloshtan is going to be effective even by a loan. And the Gemara says, Itmar Nami was learned as well. Amar Shmuel Mishmei de Levi. Shmuel says in the name of Levi, Milvali biyadcha. Here it says explicitly, there's a loan that you owe me money. Teneu lo leploni b'mayim shloshton. He says, give it to so-and-so, and that's done in front of 3 people. Kana, that creates the kinyan. And the Gemara now says, V'taim amai. So what's the reason? Why does this create a kinyan? Rashi over here says, My taima b'milva kana. Why is it that by a loan it creates a kinyan? Halesa be'ina delikniye. It's not in front of us that we should be able to affect the kinyan with this particular mana. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ameimar says, Nasa ka'omer lo b'shas matan mos. It's as if the borrower says to the lender at the time that the money was given to the borrower, Shibadn lach ledidach u'lechol da'asam achmasach. I'm meshubed not only to you, but I'm meshubed to anyone who comes on your behalf, and that's why this kinyan is effective. Rashi explains, Nasa ka'omer lo v'lamalva. It's as if the borrower says to the lender, b'shas matan mos halva, at the time that the money is given over for the loan, Meshavdana mehashta l'chol man dasim achmasach. I'm meshubed from right now to anyone who comes on your behalf. Hilkach kiyamar le teneu leploni. Therefore, when he later on says, give it to so-and-so, igloi milsa de mishas matan mos ishtabedle. He's essentially revealing that at the time of the loan, the lova was meshubed to this other person. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravashi, so Ravashi said to him, Amar le Ravashi la Amemar, rather Ravashi says to Amemar, Ela me'ata, but according to that, Hikna l'nolodim, de lo have b'shas matan mos. Let's say the Maimet Shloshtan is to somebody who was born after the time that the money was given. Hachanami de lo kanu, are you going to say that that's not going to be a kinyan? Because the whole kinyan works, because it says that at the time that the money was given, that's when this shibud took place. So if the individual wasn't born yet, it shouldn't work. The afil Rabbi Meir, because even according to Rabbi Meir, the Amar who says, Adam machna davar shelo bol yom, that a person is able to affect a kinyan with something that does not yet exist. Hani mili lid davar sheyesh no ba'olam. That's only if the kinyan is to somebody, meaning to an individual who does exist. Avol lid davar she'eno ba'olam, but to somebody that's not in the world, lo, no, that would not be a kinyan. And Rashi says, Hikna mal v'zul no lodim shazam makabel nolad la'acharo salva. Again, let's say the person who's now receiving the money through this ma'imit shloshtan was born after the loan. Hachanami de lo kana. You're going to say that's not a kinyan. They gave him the time mishum shibuda. Because since the whole reason this kinyan works is because at the time of the loan the borrower is meshubed to this individual, and now this individual who he's meshubed to is not in the world, so it's not going to be a good kinyan. Let's say a person sells the fruits that are going to come from this palm tree, or he sells the items that are going to be within this trap. So even if you say that works, that's only if he's giving it over to someone that exists. But to somebody who doesn't exist, it wouldn't work. And so over here also it shouldn't work, because at the time of the loan, you can't create a shibud to somebody who is not yet born. And so the Gemara says, Elo Amar Ravashi, rather Ravashi says, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yudalid Amud Aleph.